slip there.
No.
Okay. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Probably Irrelevant.
Possibly interesting.
With Mark and Wade. I'm the Wade part. He's the Mark part. But there's another part here today. It's we're joined by Shannon Evans of the Tombigbee Tales podcast, a podcast that's gotten pretty humongous in the local area in the past few months, and we can get into why exactly that happened in a minute if you want to. Shannon, please tell us about yourself, and welcome to the show.
Well, which side of myself do you want to know today? My professional
my
side,
dealer's
my podcast
choice.
side,
Dealer's choice.
who I am. I'm from Columbus originally,
okay.
Sort of in a long distance kind of sort of way. I left here when I turned about 18, 19, thinking I'd never come back, and COVID happened, and somehow I moved back here from Mexico.
So you're in Mexico?
Yeah, I was living in Mexico at the time.
Okay, I think you're burying the lead a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
you think?
How do we get from Columbus, Mississippi to where in Mexico?
La Manzanilla, a little tiny town south of Puerto Vallarta, about 2 hours.
Okay.
It's where the whales go to have their babies.
Wow.
Yeah. It's south of the Sea of Cortez on the Pacific Ocean.
So are you like a whale midwife or something?
No. Oh,
okay.
hell no.
No, yeah, tell me. Yeah, please. So yeah, you know, whatever
Okay.
version you're used to doing. I guess.
So I graduated. I went to Ole Miss. I went to the Middle East. Well, I actually went to Houston first, and then they sent me to the Middle East within 6 weeks. I'm guessing they really didn't like me in the office. I worked as a project manager. Came back from the Middle East.
In the oil business?
No.
Okay.
Building bridges and whatnot in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
And most of which got blown up in the war. So that's even better. Some of them where they had difficulty blowing up, so that makes me feel good. So anyways, from there, I decided I could either have kids or cats living in the desert. So I came back to the United States, went back to school, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Then went back and got an English degree at the W.
Right.
And which I can't call Brightwell. Jesus.
We can get
Mary
into
and
that too.
Joseph.
I do want to talk about. that.
So I didn't go to the dental clinic in Columbus. I went to the W, and then I went on and done a bunch of other stuff and came back to Columbus from Seattle through Mexico to here, and I'm stuck here for now.
Okay. Well,
Planning on leaving?
I have no idea.
Okay.
What are your degrees in?
Civil engineering. I went back, got a degree in English.
Always suspicious about people who go to Ole Miss to get an engineering degree.
Well, I kind of fell into that. I was supposed to get a journalism degree and go to law school, and I never do what my parents want me to
Right.
do. So I start now. And then I went back to school and got an English degree, which was also against my parents' best directions, and got a couple of masters along the way. Got a master's in the statistical analysis of human learning, which means nothing really. And then I went to an online university that I knew was an online university and worked there and got another master's in instructional design. And then I came here and I got a master's in Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing.
So broad and varied interests. That would be fair to say.
I guess I have
Okay.
I have a BS in BS.
Well, that you and
Not
I
a BA.
might share that. So, yeah, you mentioned journalism. You obviously have a passion for it. You know, listening to your show, which exhaustively covers specifically the Columbus Visitors Bureau.
Hey, if you want change to happen,
So-
it starts with you.
So, what were you doing in Mexico, though?
Escaping the cold, dark, dreary winters of Seattle.
I mean, that's a way to do it, I would imagine.
And then COVID happened, and we kind of just stayed there.
Have you ever been to Mexico?
Yeah. I've been to Puerto Vallarta, actually.
Yeah, well,
So
Puerto Vallarta is rocky, and this place is sugar sand beaches,
Okay.
and it's beautiful.
And so COVID brought you back home, I suppose.
It was the COVID numbers there were rising, and ours were actually coming down.
Okay.
And so my parents are quite up there in age.
Right.
So I came back home, essentially.
And what are you doing here in Columbus?
I work for an organization called the Mount Zion Memorial Fund.
Uh-huh.
I work in the public history domain, essentially. Work in the preservation of African American history.
Archive work?
No, I'm things like going out in the woods and looking for where African American sacred sites are and burial sites and old communities and documenting. And I have a project that's getting ready to start pretty soon, doing some archival work. Hopefully, we're working on a grant so that we can help the Mississippi John Hurt Foundation preserve all of the photos and newspapers and documents and things that they have from the Hurt family that were part of Mississippi John Hurt's collection that wasn't stolen by Tom Hoskins and a few others. And so we're helping them to preserve their documents, and we're helping them to try and protect their ancestral lands.
And so, when you say protect their documents, are these being donated to a university, or are they're going to be kept in a private collection?
They're in a private collection right now. A lot of them are behind picture frames and in photo albums and things like that.
Right.
And so they need to be documented. They need to be digitized. Some of them.
So is the goal to create like a museum space or maybe a library space?
They have a museum, and their goal is to actually try and raise enough funds to take, because they have John Hurt's home, which is a shotgun shack, and what they're trying to do is to build a building under which they can put that whole building, pick that building up and put it in it, and create classroom space and create like an archival setting so that everything is protected.
Well, real quick, for people who don't know, can you talk a little bit about Mississippi John Hurt?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
I mean, he's my favorite blues guitar player. I think he's the most unique of all those old guys, guitar players.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is, his granddaughter is one of my dearest friends. Her name's Mary Frances Hurt. She's somebody y'all should have here. I'll take y'all down to Carroll County and y'all can go hang out and I can get her hopefully to come from Chicago and we can sit around and talk. And she knows 10 times what I know.
Right.
But he's buried up in Teoc, which is above Avalon. He was essentially from the area of Avalon, which was a plantation down there.
Right.
His mother was a McLean, John McLean, and she shared ancestry. Senator John, not McLean, McCain.
John McCain?
Yeah, he's from his.
John McCain and Mississippi John Hurt were related?
Oh yeah. So
I did not know
John
that.
McCain's grandparents, mother, not mother. Well, she was from this area too, but John McCain's paternal grandparents were from. I think it's called Mitchell Springs. Is technically the little area down there, but it's in Carroll County, and it was a plantation that they had. And so when Mary Jane McCain, Mississippi John Hurt's mother, when she came into her majority, she lived and worked almost all of her life on the McCain property, and she was given 180 acres of land up there, and it's slowly been stolen from the McCain family, from the Hurt family. But John Hurt was her son. Her husband was a guy named Isom Hurt, who was lynched, and then.
What time period are we talking about?
When John Hurt was 2 or 3 years old.
Okay, so
1890.
Okay.
I think that would be right, about 1888, 1890.
I didn't realize Mississippi John Hurt was that old.
So John died in the 70s, I would guess. I think he died.
Sorry, my wife broke her leg, and every time a text comes through, I gotta check it. Everything's fine. I apologize.
I think he died in the 70s. I know that.
Okay.
He came home from Washington D.C., where he had gone to record records because of Hoskins' efforts, and after the Newport Festival, and his son had actually died, and T.C., who was Mary Frances's father, and T.C. had 13 kids, I think, 13 or 14. He had a whole house full of children, and so John came home to help take care of all those children. And so he never went back to Washington to gather his things. And he asked Tom Hoskins to gather them for him to empty his apartment that he and his common-law wife and his other son had. And then John died shortly thereafter. I think he died 18 months later. And Hoskins kept all his things and never returned them to the family.
Wow.
Including a whole bunch of stuff that John had written and they had recorded. I think they were on reel-to-reels maybe.
Yeah.
And Hoskins died and left them to his sister. And her name's Suzanne Brown, and she's married to an intellectual property attorney. And so the family's been fighting for years to try and get that property back. And they donated a lot of that stuff to the Smithsonian, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's the Smithsonian, who won't give it back.
Well, that's something else. Mark, are you familiar with Mississippi John Hurt?
Oh, yeah. So, was Hoskins his what? Manager?
No. Well,
I mean, what was their relation?
So he was the one who, quote, rediscovered him, although he was never lost.
Yeah.
John was playing all that time. The myth that there's a lot of myth around a lot of these African-American blues artists because that was, it's more interesting to create the persona.
The magical black guy.
The magical Negro. That is exactly what we call it in the industry. And what they did was John was still playing. I mean, he was playing family events. I mean, there's all kinds of photography of him, playing at the church, playing at the school. He played everybody's birthday party. He was a musician. That's what he did for a living. I love when everybody goes, yeah, he was a farmer. His children and grandchildren his grandchildren laugh and go, he couldn't grow vegetables. He was never a farmer. That just wasn't what he did. Now his son was a sharecropper, but John was not. John lived up on a hill in Teague. And he played music. That's what he did.
That's fascinating. Like I said, I love that old stuff. It's basically a running competition between Mississippi John Hurt and R.L. Burnside for me.
I love R.L.
Well, it sounds like, just from you telling that story and from the little bit I know about you, that you are an extremely curious person. You get heavily invested in things, and you might have a little bit of shit stirrer in you, too.
Well, I have friends who call me Shannon the shit stirrer. So. I mean, it's one of the things that you would find interesting is one of the projects we have down on dealing with Mississippi John Hurt is the cemetery where he's buried.
And that's in Carroll County, too?
In Carroll County. The St. James Missionary Baptist Church had the church up there, and they had a cemetery. A lot of that cemetery on that side of the road, of course, was very old, and there were no markers.
Right.
Or they were wooden markers, and they had.
Are there any records?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But the county, the guy who's in charge of the maps down there redrew some maps, and he gave the land away to this guy who put his family plot on top of it. So now it's got his wife and his mother and sister on it. That's it. But his wife is buried. Like right at her foot is a marker that's laying down, almost obscured in the grass. That's of an African American who
they just buried these
there.
Folks on top of them.
Oh hell yeah! So, anyways, I went up to him and I was like, "Do you realize this was a sacred ground to someone else first? I don't care." I'm like, you don't? He's like, "Nope, I don't care." And he's got everything that indicates where his leanings are, including his "Don't Tread on Me" flag up in his front yard. And I was like, how do you feel about your wife being buried for eternity?
I mean, yeah, that seems kind of counterintuitive.
Right.
In the arms of a black man.
Yeah.
Well, he turned around and ran inside. Well, Mary Frances said something a little bit more direct. She used a few more colorful terms, and she looks just like John Hurt, by the way.
Okay.
It's very interesting how much genetics are wonderful things. Anyways, the guy went and slammed the door. I thought he was coming back with a gun. So this summer when we did the dedication where we put up the Mount Zion Memorial Fund, we wanted to preserve across the street that is definitely still in the family we made a marker that's about almost 5 feet tall. We commissioned the Marble Works here in Columbus, and they came down and helped us, and they installed it. It's a beautiful monument, and it lists all the names of the families that are buried in there, up there, the Becks, the Richardsons, the Hurts, the Conleys, all these families. And they're all interrelated. You know, they're cousins, brothers, sisters, whatever. And to protect that piece of land forever. I mean, essentially what happened is, so we have all these people marching up, and there's people from Italy and people from France, and, you know, news agencies there. And Mary Frances is taking all these people up there to dedicate this monument. And the couple that owned the land across the road that was actually given to them, they didn't buy it, it was given to them by the Board of Supervisors. They had a big old orange extension cord. You can't come up here. I'm like, oh, God, it's the best part of Mississippi yet again. And you can imagine some of the language that came out. And the best part is it's on YouTube. These people are captured on YouTube forever for their stupidity.
Well, where can we go see that?
It's not on my YouTube site. I can find it for you.
Okay,
but it's just,
I would like to see that.
But what's funniest is Mary Frances asks this Italian. These two Italian reporters were walking along, and a filmmaker, and they asked, well, ask the Italian guy what the Italian newspaper guy what he said, and the interpreter goes, no, I can't repeat that. So, anyways, it was just, you know, the parts that are most colorful about us and most awful came out that day.
Is Mississippi John Hurt in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? They have to mention him somewhere.
I don't know.
Right?
But you know what? You know what's the worst part? The Grammy Museum down there, John Hurt won a Grammy. He won 2, I think. I think both are. I know he won the Thumb Pickers posthumously. So he's not mentioned down in Cleveland.
Huh.
Anywhere.
I wonder why.
But Willie Namour is, and the whole stuff about Willie Namour having gotten him exposure and gotten him picked, you know, winning that contest is a bunch of hogwash. So
well, I'm not familiar with that story either.
Well, it's on the Blues Trail, the Blues Marker. So hopefully we're trying to get the Blues Marker not only changed but moved. So the state has agreed that it needs to be moved. I don't know when it'll happen, but right now it's the Blues Marker to John Hurt stands in front of a place called the Valley Grocery Store, an all-white owned grocery store up in Valley, in a place where he never could have gone in the store, front or back door, and he sure as heck didn't sit on the front porch and play the guitar like is claimed. And that's where the Blues Trail marker is for John Hurt. And so we've been fighting for Mary Frances has been fighting a long time, but she and I went down to MDAH and made an appeal, and they agreed it needs to be corrected and moved.
It's always interesting to me when I go to a place, and it's usually somewhere like Clarksdale, more so than down like Carroll County or somewhere, because that's so far off the beaten track of, you know, because the Delta is where people go. And you can walk down the street down there, and at least a third of the people are going to be from Scandinavia or Italy or
Last
Germany.
time I was there, a guy was sitting with my dad at Ground Zero. Germans.
It's the Morgan Freeman Club, right?
Germans on one side, on my side, and Australians on my dad's side, sitting in there.
Who came to go to Clarksdale?
Who came to go?
I always
exactly
tell them,
right.
what you need to do is leave Clarksdale and go up to Jimmy Duck's, because that's where the real blues.
But
happens.
I imagine having some of those that blues marker actually does drive some tourism.
Well, it does,
Maybe not a huge amount. But.
Well, you'd be surprised. There are people who follow the Blues Trail, and like this year they might come and do the southern half of the Blues Trail. They'll do down on the Gulf Coast. And then next year they'll come on their 2-week vacation or 3-week vacation, and they'll do the Delta part. And then the next time they'll come up and they'll do, you know, Memphis to Nashville, whatever. It's very interesting and that's why it's important that we document these things. I mean, we have a Blues Trail marker here, and yet, well, it's in front of White on Business, but that's another story. It's on Catfish Alley, but it's not really on Catfish Alley, and it doesn't even promote Catfish Alley. even though it's Catfish Alley, it's Book of Washington, Book of White's song. But
Right.
anyways, which is just an old song that's he just put new words to, which was a very common. I mean, we still do that.
Sure.
But we have Big Joe Williams out in Crawford.
Yep.
And we put a big monument up to him. It's out in a cow field. Literally, there's cows out there all around all in that pasture. We have Maurice King in Noxubee County. So we have tons between here and Noxubee County. Why we don't have more blues signs is beyond me. I mean, King's buried out there.
I mean, you've got the Howlin' Wolf stuff in West Point.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't really from West Point.
Well, he was. He was from nearby. He was from
I can't remember the name of the town.
White Landing. Shoot. Anyways, it is. I mean, it's Clay County.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do anything with it. I mean, what's out on Catfish Alley right now? Nothing. Everything on Catfish Alley has been shut down and closed and killed. And then we have...
You mean business-wise?
Yeah. And then we have people like Nancy Carpenter who doesn't want you
There we
having
go.
things there. Well, Catfish in
understand.
the Alley, the big thing she does, it doesn't have anything to do with the blues. It doesn't even celebrate Catfish Alley. She just uses it to have an excuse to sell some T-shirts.
Well, Shannon, let me say this. I went through today, and I listened to, I'd say 50% of your non-CVB, your history episodes, which I thought were interesting. I listened to the one about...
Hardy.
No, the beating that was up here, the people, because that was right in front of my office where you're walking. My office is directly across from the Trotter. Mm-hmm. And they came up there and were...
Robert Gleed, when he ran for sheriff.
They were power washing the blood. I'm saying the guy that got beaten up
yeah.
over the decorations.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I counted, and how many episodes have you done of your show? Like 80?
I don't know. I try and do one a day.
I think it's like 78. You have 47 episodes that are about the CVB.
So tell me, your office is downtown, right?
So I listened to it. Well, let me say this. I listened to, not all of them, not going to lie, I didn't listen to all of those. Mm-hmm. But I went through there. I keep up with the news. I've worked in the city government for a little bit. I've known them for a long time. Mm-hmm. I know people and the opinions and whatnot. So I listened to ones I thought had interest.
You'll love tonight's.
What is your fascination with, like, breaking that, exposing it, however you want to put it, your personal fascination with
Before we get into that, for people who may not know what a CVB or any of this stuff means, can we do like the briefest overview of what we're talking
It is the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau,
whose job is to promote the city for tourism,
to fill our Trotter Center with conventions and events,
okay,
and to fill our town with visitors for our events.
It's a local tourism board.
That's right.
Local tourism.
Yeah. And they get appropriated money from the
$4
city
million.
and the county that goes to them.
$4 million. Tell me, what was the last convention you saw up at the Trotter Center?
Maybe before they tried to put the thing up here in the dilapidated Elks Lodge.
That doesn't count.
They had one of those down at the Trotter previously.
No.
What do you call that?
No. What do
they had a big old
that's the
fight
arts
over
and
there
antique. That's
a couple
arts and
months
antique.
ago.
Yeah.
Well, and so what was the last convention?
I have no idea.
Convention.
But I'm not probably the best person to ask.
But you should notice there should be banners saying welcome.
I'll give you
say-
an example. Like, I had a friend that was also a coworker of mine that started a comic book convention, and he had Wade and I used to go to it.
Talking about Brandon?
Talking about Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
And they had in the downstairs of the Trotter. It was well attended. It was packed to the rafters.
But it was just probably 2016 or so, somewhere around there.
And they had it there for, I think, 2 years, and they outgrew it. They moved out because he worked at the community college. They had it, that new building at the community college, and I'm sure they let him have it there for free.
Probably. But
And it was still well attended. A lot of people were there. They had celebrities in the genre there. Now, he passed away, and they didn't have it. Mm-hmm. That's something I could think of that...
so did Nancy help him at all? Did she help him connect to the hotel owners, the restaurants?
I'm not
No
sure,
earthly
not
idea.
sure.
And
No, she doesn't. Do you know
Okay.
why? She literally has said, she's on
Okay.
public record as
So-
saying, I
so-
don't do tourism.
Well, then what... Okay.
Again,
so I guess
again,
my
a
thing...
background for people who don't know what this is. We keep using the word Nancy. Okay.
Nancy Luke Carpenter. She's the director of the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Fair to
the
say,
CVB.
you don't think the CVB is well run.
I do not think that the current director is doing her job.
I guess my question is, Shannon, is, there's other things you note on there about city, Pierre Beer, Councilman Ward 4 of Columbus, and his escapades, right? To me, having lived here, live here, business owner here, there's a lot of stuff that somebody could dig into.
I'm getting there.
Okay. So I guess my thing is, why have you selected that as your topic du jour?
For right now, because she needs to go.
Okay.
There is some malfeasance with funds that can be directly attributed to her direction. There is also
criminality or suspected or yet to be proven, or just not being spent the way you want.
You suspect malfeasance. Is that what you mean?
No, I have one today that's going to be on tonight's episode that I can pretty much nail to the wall. And that one, it might seem small potatoes, but $15,000 is $15,000 to a nonprofit group.
I agree.
And that is supposed to have gone to them. She plays favorites.
Mm-hmm.
She
I guess let me say this.
She has had a board who has allowed her to behave this way up until recently.
Okay. I would tend to agree with that. I guess my thing is just in being a nihilistic or cynical person that I am. A lot of times I see people like you, but not you, it seems, who, when they get on some type of a crusade like that, a lot of times it's a personal matter, I guess is the way I'm saying.
I don't know her from Adam's House Cat.
Okay. That was kind of, you have no personal?
No.
Okay.
I've talked to her maybe 3 times face to face.
You just think that in the civic nature of what they should be doing in enhancing Columbus, she's done it poorly?
Correct. They have become, due to the prior board members,
right?
They somehow allowed her to get into the business of acquiring real estate and not tracking how that money was invested.
I listened to some of those that you talked about that.
And now that real estate is a detriment, and they haven't been good stewards of that real estate. Mm-hmm. Now when people want to purchase that real estate and do something that would bring in business, let's say a boutique hotel and that could use the Elks Club as an event center, restaurant part of there, and instead she actually told them she owned the Elks Club, which isn't true. I went to public records. That's everything I rely on is public records.
Sure.
So I went and looked up the public records. She didn't own it. The CVB owns it. My next crusade you'll love. It's this down here.
The Burns Bottom?
Yeah.
And what is your sticking point on that?
On the Burns Bottom?
Uh-huh.
Well, they wanted to do all this stuff with it, and now suddenly they're parceling parts of it off to sell it.
Uh-huh.
There again, they got in the business of buying up property that is whatever case it was in as far as state of existence. The owners were still paying taxes on it. What taxes have been collected on this piece of land for the last... How many years have they had this piece of land now? 7 or 8?
I don't know. I think they've kind of piecemeal been buying it. But you wouldn't think that that's just in that specific instance might be part of...
It's part of a bigger problem.
What a blight removal program would do. At some point they've got to transfer from tax-paying people to a non-tax-paying entity to hopefully to be redeveloped to another tax-paying entity.
Go look up who owned those pieces of property, who bought those pieces of property before they turned around, and how it was acquired, and then how it was sold.
Okay.
And then who made the most money off it. Always follow the money.
Well, I would agree with that too.
So
Yeah,
that's part of my investigative work is following where the money went and who's making the money off of it and where the money's going, and then, we start a lot of boondoggles here in this town. We have the amphitheater over there. That's as an engineer, I just laugh my tail off.
That would be one I would take a closer look at. Myself.
But it's all part. It all fits together. It's the whole thing of we're going to get all this stuff. We're going to do all this stuff, but nobody follows through. Not even. the CVB.
Well, you know,
You don't think that's just I mean, in my experience, a lot of that is representative of not of a personal deficiency, i.e., most people don't follow through with shit. And so when they're in charge of something,
when they have $4 million of my money, or $12 million of my money, or $8 million of my money,
I'm not
and
disagreeing
your money,
with you,
and your money, I do take it personally. I do. I absolutely do. And the other thing is, you know, I grew up here. I know what this town can be. I know what it was in the 80s and where the direction was going. And I don't know what the heck happened. And I know it's not my fault because I wasn't here. Maybe it was my fault. I didn't stay and raise holy hell. But nobody else seems to be as interested in raising Cain. And then all of a sudden I start raising Cain and other people start writing about it. Other people start questioning it. All it takes, what is it, the butterfly effect? All it takes is one little moth wing. I'm that one little moth wing. I'm not afraid. I have people who tell me, oh, don't write about that person. You might end up dead.
I don't know about that.
Oh, well, I mean, I have been told that.
I've heard similar things too.
And I just laugh because I'm 61 years old. You can kill me once. I can die once, but my words will live forever.
I mean, I get your point. Sunshine is the best sanitizer. You're shining the sunlight onto these.
I'm curious if you feel the same way, because I truly believe this, and I've had a little bit to do with local government in a very minor capacity. But I was a reporter and TV news producer around here for a while. And in my experience, it's very rarely, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare that it's actual criminal intent, and it's 95% of the time pure incompetence is why things happen.
Incompetent. Yeah. Although, I will say, there has been a concerted white-collar criminal element that has pervaded public monies in this community. Historically.
Can you give an example of that?
That's pretty heavy.
Well, all you got to do is go back to the Dixie Mafia. I mean, this is not something new.
Okay.
You know, Alfred Wright, who had, was right across the river forever. I mean, heck, when I was a kid, I used to remember going to the bootlegger. I mean, we've always had these people who are around the outside of it putting pressure on good people in public office to do little thing here and a little thing there. Well, those little things become dominoes.
You just mean good old boy club stuff.
Yeah, mostly.
Okay.
There's a lot of good old girl clubs,
but
too.
a lot of, I guess my kind of thing in having been around people is that the people who quote unquote are the good old boys don't run the city government anymore, unless you're saying they do.
Yeah. That's exactly what you're saying.
The old white people that were the good old boys don't.
Well, you said you put a color to it. I don't. The Dixie Mafia.
Well, I'm saying
white,
the people that you named in those examples were all white people.
Dixie Mafia was, but not. I wouldn't. I would say. I mean, Leroy Brooks told me once. He said. Politics of the black community is a blood sport. And all you got to do is watch the elections, and in there's, I mean, this community has always since desegregation has fought gerrymandering. I mean, they've fought to create some parity, but just like in the white community, black communities aren't immune to.
Yeah, they're not as unified as we sit around and think they are.
No, not at all.
I think. Remember Ike Brown,
who was
head of the Democratic Party in Knoxville County, and he got in all that trouble for election. It wasn't tampering; it was intimidation, right?
Yeah.
They used the vote. It was the first case they used the Voting Rights Act against the African American in the country.
I think he said something to the equivalent of "Everything y'all are accusing me of doing, I learned from these white guys."
Exactly.
Well, but I've had people that I'm not going to name on the show, but black local politicians that have told me that have said, "Y'all been doing this."
Exactly.
The whole time, now it's our turn. Which, I mean, I'm kind of a realist. That's the way politics works.
It's always
But that doesn't mean I have to like it
or
tolerate it.
I'm not saying you should.
So rather than I don't sit around and go, well, that's the way it's always been. Well, yeah, but that's the way it's always been. Because people have lived in fear or intimidation, or they're worried about having a job, or they're worried about their kids getting on the sports team because that person coaches them. There's all this pressure.
But don't you think unless the stuff just hits like your average voter in the face, the real problem is abject apathy and ignorance that anything is happening in the first place?
Most human beings are cowards. I'm just going to be truthful.
Okay.
You wouldn't.
You mean? But I don't mean. I mean. Okay. It's cowardly if you know something's happening and you don't do anything about
Correct.
it when you feel like you should. What I mean is they are, for whatever reason, ignorant that anything is happening at all, ignorant of how local politics work, ignorant of how government works, unless they are dealing directly with a thing. Then all of a sudden you will see people
like if they
get
lose a
worked up.
bid that they should have gotten or something.
Or if the county's decided to take some property of theirs, those kind, or this annexation thing is a perfect example
which is
of that.
just stupid. It's all about trying to I'm not a fan of it because we can't police the property we have.
I think it's unconscionable to not ask the people who live in the
Correct.
places you're trying to annex whether or not they want to be
they
annexed.
will. They have to by law.
No, actually, they'll go to court, and then y'all can go to the courthouse. This is what was explained to me by multiple people. There won't be like a bond. Like you won't go and ask them. They will have a day in court, and the county has as much a day in court. And the county leadership they don't have any more of a vote than anybody else. And they'll go in and they'll plead their case. And that's how it's going to be decided.
A judge makes the decision?
Pretty much.
I just think, from what I've read, and I've done no intricate research,
neither.
but that, it's going to be a net negative financially for the city.
Well, what's going to happen? Here's what it boils down to.
I thought the idea was they were going to get $260,000 in additional tax revenue if they did this.
No, that's a bunch of BS.
Okay.
Most of the people who live over there, one, are non-voters, but there's a community that thinks that they will get more voters in the city. And
Swing black voting districts. That's why they're trying to do it out in East Columbus. To flip Rusty's seat. That's what they want to do.
I got you.
In my opinion, that's probably
that is exactly
that's what they'll try to do is to flip that 3 seat or buff up the 2 seat, which is Joseph Mickens' seat, because it's small, it's dwindling, and he's vulnerable.
And I mean, I've heard Mickens say that was the point of it. I had Leroy tell me, he's like, this is not good, and this is all about creating the perception that it will make so that Columbus always has a black mayor going forward, which he said, and I agree, it's insulting because that implies that African Americans only vote for African Americans, and we know historically that's not true.
I mean, the current mayor could not have gotten elected
Correct.
if black people didn't vote for him.
Correct, and so it's.
See, that's kind of what I'm sick of, and I realize it's naive to say this, but I am very sick of this idea that there are basically 2 political parties that exist in this city and in this state and in this part of the world, which are not Democrat or Republican. It's black and white.
Yeah, and it's stupid.
And I find it irritating. I find it obnoxious, and I don't know how you move forward as a society that has the potential to be a true economic powerhouse in this country until folks can realize at the end of the day we're all damn human beings, and let's try to make that
exactly.
work.
And it goes back to a lot of what I do, and a lot of what I'm doing is I'm looking at stuff and I'm going, God, this is just stupid. I mean, that's where all this started. I mean, I came back and I'm going, what happened to? Let's just start with pilgrimage. Maybe pilgrimage is going out of style, but I will tell you, it is a multi-billion-dollar business still. You may have someone at the tourism office that thinks it's gone out of style, but I'm going to tell you, go to Savannah, go to Charleston, go to Natchez.
Yeah.
And there's ways you can modify
and
it
you can modify
to make it
inclusive. We have more Victorian homes that could have their own tour. Or we used to have walking tours, the Star Tour. We had the Silver Tour. Then we had the Gold Tour. We had all this stuff.
And with what the Tales from the Crypt project, the Math Science School does, this area gets more national press and positive press associated with a pilgrimage than I would hazard to guess any other community this size in the country. And
the thing about the Tales from the Crypt is we used to have, and I've been working, and this goes back to what my most recent thing on the CBB. I'm working with a group of filmmakers here this week. They'll be here till like the 16th. It's filmmakers and paranormal. They're paranormal filmmakers for a documentary and paranormal podcasters.
So are they ghosts themselves? Or are they
no,
just
they're real
represent
people.
ghosts?
So the one guy, he has his downloads. He's like the authority on Bigfoot, which cracks me up. And we have our own cryptid type stories on the Tombigbee and stuff, and in the area. But that's not what he's here for. He is, but he isn't. He's here to tie in the history of our town and the houses that have allegedly ghosts in them.
Like ghost story legends. Yeah.
But tying it all together, what is the common theme here? And the common theme is that human beings have been fascinated with death forever, right?
Sure.
So, but there's big money that we're leaving on the table because we used to have a Ghosts and Legends tour.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And that was very big, and it was sold out every year until somebody took over the office up there, and she doesn't like it. But a lot of that, I think, is just because she doesn't like to plan, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's not her favorite thing to do. So when she's not swanning about over at Mississippi State, and where she does all her shopping and everything else, she don't even buy her liquor in Columbus. Instead of being invested in our town and the potential, that is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And instead of tapping in on a tiny piece of that, we're leaving money on the table.
I just want to say one thing and continue whatever path you want to go down. Nancy Carpenter's always been really nice to me.
She's personable. No one said she wasn't. She's just not good at her job.
Okay.
I mean, let's just be honest. She'd be a great greeter at Walmart.
So
for all the tourism she's brought here.
So do you really think, though, that just moving that one component and putting somebody else in is the key to fixing all these problems? It's a start.
It's a start.
But that's happening, isn't it?
Well, with this person, she has ways, and I'll believe it when I see it. She's supposed to be out March 31st, but she's moving over to the Tennessee Williams building, and she's going to be their director for the visitor center, which she tried to give away, by the way. She tried to give it back to MDOT. Did you know that? She tried to give Tennessee Williams building back to MDOT without even telling anybody.
Was there a reason?
Yeah, she was mad because she was told she wasn't going to be paid to be the director of both the Tennessee Williams Center and the CVB. And so they were going to take money out of her pocket. She couldn't do that anymore because the State Ethics Committee said that was unethical for them to be in charge of both entities and have the same board. At one point, the same board was both. And so they said she couldn't do that, and she got mad, and that's when she decided, she said, well, then let's just give it back to MDOT. So she contacted MDOT and was going to give it away, except a couple of people on the board found out about it, which she then got them off the board.
Well, that kind of brings up an interesting question to me, is that, unless I'm mistaken, you've got the city votes for a portion of that board. Mm-hmm. The county votes for a portion of that board, and they have like a mixed at-large seat or something.
Correct.
What is their response? I've seen the city and county governments. Are they just so busy with other things, doing other things? Do you know?
There are, as a whole, I think the leadership of both places would like to see her gone. Everybody is afraid because she's friends with Tate Reeves' sister-in-law and brother.
Okay.
She goes to their box seats at baseball, and so they think there's this perception that she has more power and connections. I mean, she helped host the governor's wife's left foot tea. I don't know, whatever it was called. Anyways, a big tea, and she's involved in the Republican Women's Organization down in Jackson. And so there's this perception that has this.
There's going to be political repercussions.
Yeah, which is stupid.
Okay.
Because I'm sorry, the governor's got a heck of a lot more on his plate. And by the way, his brother-in-law's got a whole lot more on his plate and probably trying to stay out of jail over his deal with Brett Favre. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if there's any more taint to anything, I'm betting they're going, Nancy who? When she calls. So I don't understand.
Well, they did get some members on that board recently who were not, I think it's fair to say, sympathetic to
yes people.
Yeah.
I think they are fair. I think there are people on the board and on the executive committee of that board who are fair and honest and sometimes vote with her and sometimes vote against her for the right reasons. I think they try and do the right thing. And I think they understand that it's time she goes, that it's good for Columbus and it's good for tourism in this town for a shift.
Well, you were saying something earlier that kind of struck me because you said, and I remember how it was in the '80s, and it was better than it is now. And my recollection, because I grew up around here too. Okay, well maybe not that, because I can remember before Jan Miller and
Jan Swope,
Chris Chain redid downtown. Like, it was scary to go downtown. Like, it was not a place when I was a little kid growing up living out in the county, we didn't go downtown. You certainly didn't go down Catfish Alley. I can remember being a kid and we were doing something at the Trotter, some school thing, and people were betting one another to go out in the alley because the idea was you were immediately going to get murdered. Now, that's probably ridiculous and absurd. I mean,
it was just really dumpy because I grew up on South Side.
It was
I grew up
definitely
on 3rd Avenue South.
It was definitely the
Where did you
impression.
grow up on 3rd Avenue South?
Right behind Brookshire's, pretty much.
Okay, I grew up on 3rd Avenue South and 7th Street, where they're across from Ames I Love.
Oh, okay. I know which house you were in. So the Evans boys were in that house kind of next to you, the Hortons, Jeff Horton had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Evanses lived down there. I was, where the Searcy and Rice building, the Searcy building on 3rd?
Yeah.
I was right across the street in that big red brick house. My parents renovated that from.
Wowzers. What year was that?
I grew up there in the
Before
70s.
Me, yeah.
I graduated high school in 1980. That can tell you how old I am.
Okay.
I'm older than dirt.
So my parents would have fixed that house up in the late 70s, Carter administration.
Yeah.
And moved in there.
Yeah, we were living there then. But
yeah, people forget about that don't remember that Dairy Fresh Brookshire's was there.
Yes,
yeah.
I remember.
Milk
I remember
plant
that.
and
We went on field trips over there.
stunk and ran their diesel trucks all night.
Yeah, the generators running.
I don't remember it being dangerous so much weight as just being a lot of it was very dumpy.
I remember the impression for people who, because I'm out in New Hope, who came in was that it was.
God, and we were terrified of New Hope. So a lot of it is just cultural.
I think
stuff.
You're probably right.
But I grew up. I rode my bike all over downtown. My mother was the managing editor of the newspaper. She was the first woman who was a managing editor of a daily paper in the United States who was not either married to or related to the publisher or the editor.
Well, that's neat. So that must be where some of your journalism love comes from.
Because I don't have a degree. Remember, I didn't do.
Right,
I did just the opposite. But I grew up in that newspaper office. I mean, my mother, every other Sunday, her column was about my antics. I grew up on the river. I grew up. There used to be a swing over there, and we used to go down the bank and hang out on a swing.
Yeah.
We used to crawl under the bridge that they're working on. So I don't remember it. I mean, just like any other town. I mean, there were. I learned to pitch pennies behind the Parker furniture on the wall there, and I got tore up for doing that. But it was a very colorful and fluid community.
Okay.
I mean, everybody went to the Jones restaurant.
Yeah.
And Fridays I went. When I was a kid, I used to pull catfish out of the river and sell it to the ladies who would buy my catfish out of the back of the Jones restaurant, and then they'd grill them out front, and from myself and some other fishermen. So we all, I'm not saying it was perfect or idyllic or any of that. I mean,
Sure.
I know the cultural and racial, inequities that existed in this town, but we had a thriving downtown. We did, because we didn't have the mall until the 70s. And then when it flooded, we still didn't have. We watched the Magnavoxes float down on national television out the street. But we had so much. But there was more community then. And we've lost a lot of that community. And it was black and white. And, the interesting thing is my husband is from England. And so the first time I brought him here was when we moved here from Mexico. So that was culture shock for him because he's from Manchester, England. And all he's ever heard is how racially divided the South is. The first winter we came here, it was the end of COVID. We're standing out. We're sitting on the wall of First Presbyterian Church, white, black, everybody, watching the Christmas parade.
Yeah.
It was a daytime parade. Everybody was cheering on the kids from the different bands, from Motley, from Columbus High, from New Hope, all these. And it was just lots of families, and people were calling to each other, people who knew each other from their businesses, their churches. I mean, churches here were not integrated at all until now. So we need to rebuild that sense of community. And I think that's a big piece in having civic pride. We've lost that civic pride.
Well, let me ask you this: you're pretty passionate about pointing out things you have issues with. Are there good things happening in this community?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I honestly think there's some things going on in the different schools. I'm watching what's happening at Franklin. I'm watching what's happening down at Joe Cook. I see, happy, healthy children who are eager to go to school in the morning and learning, and we need to figure out how to transfer that to of course, middle school's the black hole of life, but, transfer that to the high school. I see what's going on out at the county, and so many of the kids are at the high school getting college credit and going out to EMCC and the partnerships. And I think we need to grow more of that. And the other thing is we need to grow more service-oriented. We used to be a very service-oriented community. And there are a handful of people who are doing some great things. And I think they need more support. And it's easy to be complacent.
Yeah.
Everybody's...
I blame a lot of things on that. I blame a lot of things on complacency, apathy, and ignorance.
Well, and a lot of it is just it's easy to stay home.
Yeah.
And it's hard work to...
be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chop up apples and make soup. We don't see a lot of that around. It's always the same people, but I think that's true in a lot of communities. It's always the same people doing the same thing. And we need to change that.
Well, speaking of community, I don't know if y'all heard or not, but our university in this area, Mississippi University for Women, has just announced that after 2 years' worth of deliberation, they have decided on a new name for the school in an effort to attract more students and better represent its mission. And the name they have chosen is Mississippi Brightwell University. And I'm curious, Shannon, what do you think about that?
You really want to know what I think? I think it is somebody's marketing. I think an MBA fresh out of school said, I think we should do Brightwell because, we use light from light and somehow we get Brightwell from light from, I don't know. I think it's a stretch what they have decided to.
Do you agree that they should change the name at all?
Absolutely. And I think 90% of the alumni agree that they need to change the name. I think what the pushback is, and I saw the poll today, and I think 80% of the respondents on every poll I've seen are against the new name. The new name is devoid of any history of the state, of anything to do with education that I can find. And as an educator, I take big offense with that. What is worse is that they pretended to invest in the alumni's opinion. And they gave us a couple of polls. They also asked for specific feedback. And then... like
potential name selections, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of it was regional. Some of it was like Callaway University. Some of it was like Mississippi University. And all these different options. And Brightwell was not on a single list I ever got, and I've talked to lots of people. So it felt like bait and switch. That was bad enough. So they make this announcement. So then the Alumni Association sends out a letter back to the alumni that had said, hey, we don't like how you did this. We don't say you don't need a new name. We agree. But it's like you've totally negated and forgotten every piece of history. That is a cutting-edge, historic school. For all its things, whatever anybody wants to say. We talk about inclusivity, and that's part of their mission. And suddenly they became exclusive and decided what was best. And they said, essentially in their alumni letter, that the way it came across was, yeah, we heard what you had to say, but we didn't care what you said. We decided this, and this is the way it's going to be. And that's kind of how it comes across, and the alumni are pissed.
You mean the letter from...
the Alumni Association. The
Alumni Association to individual alumni? That
to
was
the alumni,
letter?
yeah.
Okay.
And that was, I guess, yesterday's knee-jerk.
Do you think most of the people feel like you that... because I'm kind of this opinion. Most people don't like things to change at all. They like their rut. They like things.
Correct.
And so anything that is a change, they kind of
We all knew it was coming.
And say, I don't care for this.
No, we were excited about the change. The alumni were involved. The alumni were excited about the change.
Do you feel that they were
The community
the bait
was
and switch is that you were provided a list of.
And Brightwell wasn't on it. Is what she's
Brightwell,
saying.
no
Okay.
version of Brightwell. It wasn't well bright. It wasn't
okay.
light. It was nothing.
Okay.
The list was things like Northeast Mississippi University,
Okay.
the University of Eastern Mississippi.
There was like a Southern Appalachia on there too, which
yes.
was the funniest one.
Yeah, that was, I thought, because there's some, never mind. But the
See that
closest
mountain?
yeah, I know. What's the highest point in Mississippi? I think it's 300 feet above sea level.
861, I think.
I think
Mount
you're right.
Woodall.
Yeah, yep, you are absolutely right. So there's nothing that, I'm like, none of it. And the other thing is here we are, we've been talking about minorities all day and underrepresented people. Women are underrepresented.
Sure.
Here we had a university that was founded because women were underrepresented and women had no place to go to school.
Well, let's be a little bit fair about
Well, wait a
that.
minute.
That's not why the W was founded. It was a finishing school for ladies
Well, that was the first version.
in the 1800s. Yeah.
But it was still founded for girls.
Sure, that's true.
And that was a very rare thing. Just
It
like
was the
having
first one.
the first elementary school that was free to the community.
I sometimes forget we have people like around the world who listen to this. It's like around the world. It's like 2 people in Germany. And so I worry about the 2 people in Germany. For those of you who don't know, Columbus is home to something called the Mississippi University for Women, which is the first publicly funded women's college in the United States of America, founded in 1884.
It was founded. It was passed in Congress on the same day that Union Academy was passed.
Okay, so it's very historic. It's a beautiful campus in the south side of Columbus. In in the 70s, it changed its name to the Mississippi University for Women. In 1982, there was a lawsuit because a young man wanted to get a nursing degree and we call it the W, from the W. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said the W had to start letting
Men in.
And it's just kind of been.
And then I don't think he ever
he
actually
didn't
enrolled.
go to school. He didn't go to school.
Didn't go to school.
Or he enrolled and never attended class.
That's right.
I have a degree from the W. And for years, there's been this talk about changing the name to better reflect what it does. I'll say this: I wouldn't. My first reaction to the name was kind of like, too. Okay, but I would rather it be Brightwell than not change.
Well,
And I
no
worry
one-
that if there's all this guff and hubbub about it, and the legislature hears it, and they say we don't want this, then they're going to shut it
the
down.
legislature was already. I'm going to tell you, the legislature already. They had probably already gone before they made the big
But
announcement.
if there's enough stink
Surely
made
they
about
would
it,
have.
I mean, I would
I don't
hope
think
so.
they care. I don't honestly think they care. You know what I think is going to end up happening? Is that this is going to be just like every other name change we've had. And Brightwell, or whatever the heck we want to call it, and I think Mississippi State, we're going to become Mississippi State's East Campus or something. And I think that's overdue.
I think in the long term, you
Because
can
of
probably expect
Brightwell, or
something.
just
No,
you mean
because-
that was an
because
that was
of-
an inevitability.
And then I think it's an inevitability. They've lost most of they're going to continue to lose their endowments. I think they'll lose a lot of money over Brightwell. And the Board of Governors doesn't seem to want to fix anything. We have students over there without heat, without adequate air conditioning or heat in their dormitories. We have buildings that are condemned on that campus because of the tornado. We have,
Which happened in 2001?
I think that's right. We have, that's 2 whole dormitories. That's Fant Dorm, and I can't remember the other one.
Peyton, because I lived
Yeah.
there. I went to MSMS, the
Yeah.
Math and Science School, and that's where I lived, and then the tornado came.
The School for Humanities is in Painter. Is that the name of the building? I can't remember. It's right behind what used to be called Whitfield Auditorium.
Mm-hmm. Now it's rent.
Whatever.
But they have made some improvements, at least to the physical plan. I mean, they demolished the 2 dormitories there and built the culinary arts. They renovated the demonstration.
No. They renovated one end of demonstration. The other side of demonstration, the books, and it still looks like, you can go in there, the chalkboards are still up. They're still writing on the chalkboards. There's books laying there. Demonstration has not been. And by the way, do you know that most of where all of that, of what where demonstration and all that is, those were all African American homes. That was a community where
They bulldozed and built the DEM school?
Oh, not just the DEM school. They also built the
Mary
faculty
Wilson
housing,
okay.
the communications building, all of that. And part of that, of course, further on down used to be the school had a farm. to feed fresh vegetables and stuff to the students.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but Puckett House was moved to where it is. But there were a handful of homes closer to college that were middle class white homes, and then the rest of it were middle class African Americans, and it was a very affluent black business community.
60s or 70s when they did this?
Up until the 60s.
Okay.
But that piece was torn down in like 1908, 1909.
Oh, wow.
Because
Okay.
that's when Dim School was put in.
Okay. So more than 100 years ago.
Yeah, but they did take, that very south end of what was Dim School, and then they put up the speech pathology school, which is great. I don't have a problem with that. But it's the fact that you still have students that don't have adequate housing. You still have students who are worried about their safety on campus, or not their personal safety so much as the safety of their personal items, the cars that get broken into. There's no. Last I looked, there were no cameras up or anything, and the lighting is. I mean, it's a beautiful older campus, but they are investing in new things while not being good stewards of the things that are historic, that still have usability and purpose.
Well, I would say this, and just for the record, my mom went to the W.
Mm-hmm.
I went to high school at the W. Mm-hmm. I've got a degree from the W, and I worked at the Math and Science School for almost 10 years. That place is like home in many ways for me. College budgets and what they're allowed to appropriate funds for and what they're not allowed to appropriate funds for is deeply, deeply complicated. And sometimes it's easy to see, because look, I agree with you. I've been on a rant about getting the residence halls for the high school kids to go to the Math and Science School fixed for years and years.
It's an embarrassment.
It's wild. But it's not like the president of the W can wave a magic wand.
How much money did it cost for this new marketing ploy to get Brightwell out?
I don't know, but I do think that, speaking of the marketing stuff, I work at Mississippi State basically I'm a glorified recruiter. Okay? So I go to a lot of college fairs. I feel so bad for the people at the W booth. Because it says Mississippi University for Women on top of it, and not a soul walks up to that thing. Because what do you think? If you don't live, this is the thing that I think people in this community have to understand. If you get outside of a 50-mile square radius of Columbus, nobody knows what the W is. Nobody. And what I think they're trying to do in terms of naming it this is a couple of things. One, I think everybody always says about the W is it's like this wonderful little private liberal arts college. That's the feel you get from it. And so I think they're leaning into that with the name. Number two, I think from a marketing perspective, the most catastrophic thing you can do is do some geographic locator. Because if you don't differentiate yourself from the rest of the universities in this state, everybody thinks you're Ole Miss, including Mississippi State, by the way. You get outside of the contiguous states to Mississippi, nobody knows what anything is other than Ole Miss. And so that's my guess as to why they're going for this, what some people would call
So why not go with
extreme
Callaway
name.
or Kincannon University? I'm not saying that's what they should.
My guess is you can knock around some skeletons in a closet of any of those people and find something distasteful that might make it politically incorrect to have that person's name.
Perhaps we also have the
Were
African
those
American.
alumni?
They were
names?
massive donors. Well, yeah, the Callaways were and the Kincannons, but they were some of the people who started the university. Why not go with one of the African American women who one of the first? I think there were 5 African American women who integrated the university. Why not use one of their names? They would have allowed it. The ones that are still, the 4 that I know of would have. I mean, why not find something? In Texas, there's a women's college there.
Yeah.
It's men and women. Nobody's changing their name, and they're not losing money.
Is it a public university or private?
It's public.
Okay.
I think it's called Texas Women's College. I think Texas Women's University now.
Okay.
I think what I have an issue with, excuse me, is there's this implication because of the name, and they picked it, that these dumbasses at the W just made this dumbass decision without thinking about anything. I know some people up there, and they're not dumbasses.
No, they're not. But I think it was done in a vacuum, and I think that's the harm.
I think that there was probably a significant amount of market research that went into this, And I think that's the one that tested the best. That's why I think they landed on that. And because if they didn't, by the way, I'll say this: if they didn't do that, then it's crazy. Okay.
I
think that they were prepared for this blowback.
I'm gonna put this on the line. Somebody somewhere is benefiting financially from the name Brightwell, and I will wait.
Whatever marketing company they paid to
I
do
will
it, I
wait
imagine.
and see how that shakes out.
Like in what way? I'm just interested
how
in
would
that.
you? How would you?
Like they own the trademark or
Something. I'm just waiting
There
to
is
see.
an Atlanta financial company
Yes,
called
there is.
Brightwell.
financial services.
And I've got to go back and look. I am almost certain, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'm not infallible. Hard as that may be to believe. I know that company, and if it's who I think it is the same company that when you made your payment plan for your master's program a couple of years ago, you dealt with. I'm pretty sure it was Brightwell. So I'm going to go.
Pretty sure it's a financial technology company.
I'm going to go and look because I remember talking to the lady and I took a screenshot because I was fascinated. Because I'm like,
I mean, that's interesting. It'd be a stretch. It would be like naming your school Franklin Financial because they do your debt collecting.
well, but my point is they didn't do it for that reason.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere is making a dime off it. And here's my bigger question. And you said this. You said you fought for the kids at MSMS to have decent housing. I mean, I'm going to tell you this. The student center where they do the meals and stuff, and they put on some feasts there. I mean, for dormitory food, that was pretty good food. I went.
It's a lot better than when I was going to school.
Oh, it's
there.
a lot better than when I was a kid, and we used to go down to the Goose and have a burger.
It was called the Marriott. We used to call it the Rot back then.
Yeah. And so I mean, you at least had. I had some. I have celiac disease, so I was able to just say, "Hey, I have celiac. How can you help me? Or do I need to bring something?" Because I was there for a summer residential program as part of my master's. And so here are people coming from all around the country for this master's. And I was like, thank God we had good food because the paint is freaking peeling off the building that we're in where that houses the school for your Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. They had the heat on the first week we were there. They couldn't figure out how to turn the heat off for the HVAC because it was broken. This is a summer program in Mississippi.
I'll say this from my personal experience of working and dealing with government purchasing at all levels, from the federal government to the state government. One of the hardest types of money that like the W or anybody can get is to build and rehab new buildings. It's very difficult to get money from the federal government or like say the ARC or whatever is the channel in which the federal government is going to send money to like a state or an organization like the ARC that can fund money. They'll put computers in their desks, whatever they want, smart boards, all the kind of stuff to enhance your classroom. But to fix the building up or build a new building is some of the hardest money to get for somebody like them. Do I know or wonder? To your point, well, they're building a new building, which is going to have some, maintenance costs, and fixing the old buildings. I would say I went up there, and I'm not. My wife teaches at MSMS, but I didn't go to the W. I'm not associated with it. But I went over there. They had an event, and I went with another husband and we were moving tables and whatnot. And I saw there's paint is peeling and this and that other. They have to be aware of it. I don't think it's a dereliction of duty.
It's not a priority.
But I wonder if they just don't have the money.
I think that's a lot.
Okay, so I go back to.
And they're sitting there and they're doing I have to believe, just like this, that they're probably doing the best with what they have.
How many students can the culinary arts program support a year? Do you know?
I have no earthly idea.
I wonder what the enrollment is.
Of the school or culinary arts?
The culinary arts.
I don't know. I think there's about
That's a
2,400 full-time students.
It's in that neighborhood.
Right now.
Okay.
It's in that neighborhood.
That's of the whole university. That's
Yes.
not the culinary
Yeah,
arts
right.
school.
Whole university.
The bulk of those are in the nursing program. The others are in the School of Education. And then the rest are sprinkled about. Have you been to the culinary arts building? I went to their grand opening. Holy cow. Beautiful.
Well, that's
stunning.
That's kind of one of those things where occasionally you can have a singular personality create something remarkable, and you can lay that in many ways at the feet of Sarah Levinsky.
Okay, did somebody donate that?
She didn't. They brought her in.
You talking the money? I think that's COVID money. I think that's COVID money given to the state that the state
I'm
doled out.
gonna tell you, I can go take a $25 thing of caulking and go around the windows of the building. Just of the one room I was in where I got my degree, where I got my English degree. Now I go there it was bad when I got my English degree back in the 90s. Go back.
Okay, I thought you were first talking about the culinary arts building.
No. The new building's gorgeous.
Okay.
Stunning.
So your building.
Millions and millions of dollars.
So
but
you're just noting this dichotomy between a brand new building. Okay.
Because we have missing panes.
Well, one reason
glass.
is the culinary arts program brings people to the university.
Well, I'm gonna tell
Here's the truth about the W. It is a hard truth, but it's true. And if they don't figure out how to deal with this, then you're right. They're going to get swallowed up by Mississippi State or Southern Miss or somebody else. But there are a few strata of students who go to that school, one of which is, like you said, nursing, right? It's got a fantastic nursing program, and there are people who go to the W specifically for those kinds of things. Second strata are people who wound up there because they either messed up at Mississippi State, they couldn't get in for one reason or another, and so they wind up going to the W.
Because of local reasons? Why would
they get a job. They went to Mississippi State, and then they go to EMCC, they clean up their act, they come here, they have to get a job.
Right. But what's advantageous about it?
Cheaper.
It's cheaper, and it's where you're working. A lot of them work here in the community, and so they go to the W to get a degree.
There are very, very, very few people, and it's part of it is a result of the geography, because the W is 25 miles away from Mississippi State. It's about 60 miles away from Alabama. And Ole Miss is only an hour and a half away. And so there are very, very few people. I'm not saying there are none, but few who grow up thinking, I'm going to go to the W.
I wasn't going there. That was the last place I was going.
That's precisely what I'm saying. But the culinary school has done a good job in terms of being a competitive recruiting program to get people in. They are probably, they are making whatever money they're making, revenues coming out of that nursing school and revenues coming out of that culinary school. I would be shocked if I don't know if they call it arts and sciences or College of Humanities, makes any money for them at all.
I mean, it is not nearly as big as the nursing school.
Certainly.
But I will tell you that
and back to your point about follow the money. In my experience in the university setting, the nicer buildings are the ones that are drawing people in, and that's why they're nicer. You go to Mississippi State and go over to the Bagley School of Engineering, and it's like you're in Star Trek. You go over to the Arts and Humanities. Bless them. It's in Allen Hall. It looks like it was built in the.
It looks like a Soviet gulag.
That's exactly what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like.
Your students are not living in a culinary arts dormitory or a history dormitory. They're living in regular dormitories. That is very true. And those dormitories are an embarrassment. And so all I'm saying is it doesn't matter what you call the school.
You've offended Mark. He's leaving.
That's fine. He's got a tiny bladder. It doesn't matter what you call the school. No one is disagreeing that the school needs to be renamed. No one is saying that. I don't think Brightwell is going to attract anybody any more than if you called it Northeast Mississippi University.
This is how cynical I am about that. I think unless you called it like the doo-doo school, the name doesn't matter. It just has to be a name.
Well, let's go back.
That is not gender exclusive.
So let's take this back to what the school has said is why they changed the name.
Well, they got to say something. That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense.
So hang on. Let me go back. Let me put this in. The school came back and they said there are people who don't want to attend here because it says women on it. That's that ephemeral people. Where are the statistics? I want to see the measurements and what tool did they use to gather that. So now we're going to say, okay, so Mississippi University, the people who are here, the people who graduated from here, male and female, And I have heard from males that they don't like the new name. We all agree.
Sure.
It needs to be changed. No one has a problem with that. What is the problem is that they had data that they could have used to help them choose a name. They had a measurement tool. Now, we could go into the semantics of how accurate it was and how,
And it's really hard to get. I mean, I can tell you how they did it. You get a survey pool. Your research question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely?
I do have a master's in statistics.
Well, there you
I
go. How likely are you to attend a school called the Mississippi University for Women? Everybody said.
Show me the data.
See, I don't know.
I don't think they have any. Or if they do, why aren't they sharing it? That would be the logical answer to this argument.
My biggest assumption, and if this is wrong, then I'm wrong.
Leave for just a little bit, and y'all are getting all feisty.
Then I'm wrong. Is that
I just asked for the statistics.
It doesn't matter. Is that they are smart enough?
Beverage.
They're at least smart enough to hire a marketing company who was going to actually conduct those surveys rigorously. Okay.
How many marketing companies have you ever worked with?
A couple. But
and what was your opinion of them as a?
If you're talking about gathering data, it was actually pretty good. If you're talking about
acting on the data,
that's different. Yeah.
Okay. We don't know what the data is because nobody's sharing it. All I'm saying is they have not, back to sunlight, they were not, they did it in a vacuum.
And I'll say this,
the
best thing they
wrong.
could do, the best thing they could do is like, look, alumni, here's what we've got. This is what people said. We surveyed 500 people in California, and this is what they came back with.
Because they didn't do that with the letters that with the
the rollout has been a disaster.
And I think they didn't do all of those things because I'm betting, because Nora is not an idiot. And if Nora had that data, I think she'd be the one sharing it with us.
And I'll say one more thing that I think is positive. I feel it's positive.
The marketing and potential recruiting data.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know that they have. You would think that would have been part of the rollout, how they would have presented it.
Not me necessarily.
Well, especially now that so many of us are complaining about it.
I think what they think, and I think some of it is true, despite what you two think, and me, I'm kind of ambivalent on, is that they were prepared for some tumult, no matter what.
Yes.
That they, meaning the administrators, the local legislature, whoever, is prepared for some tumult because that's what's happened before, and it's. And people, like I said, people dislike change, so they're prepared for some tumult. They might not know the intensity that you've described of the tumult or the breadth of it.
All you have to do is look on social media.
But they were. I know that Nora Miller and the people there, they're smart people. They know that there's going to be some tumult, and so they just said, "Listen, we've got to weather some tumult." I'm imagining we've got to weather it. Stand strong, do this, and if we're successful in whatever is like the machinations of this is going to help recruit these people, and here's this 3 to 5 year plan to do thus and so.
Right.
If they're successful, then everybody is quiet. So, I'm not saying that is what they're doing.
I think they're weathering the storm. I think you're absolutely
from a business perspective. If I was sitting there,
I would agree on one.
That's kind of my mentality. If I was there, what I would think.
But I think that's only 1/3 of their funding. Where does their funding come from? It's not tuition. Tuition's important. I think that pays salaries. Where does their money come from for their future, for any buildings, for anything they do? It is at the state. Where does it come from? Gifts and alumni.
I bet you that's negligible for the size of their budget. It has to be.
I don't think so. There have been some sizable. I mean, you have some.
I mean, I'm just talking out of my ass because I have no idea.
I don't know.
So
what was the last big donation made? Like in the millions of dollars of the W.
It's patently irrelevant. If somebody.
Well, hang on. I know that there was a. And I can't think of who it was.
Mississippi School for Math and Science.
Yay! Go MSMS. What I do know is there was a huge rift a few years ago, and I can't remember the name. It was a very short-lived president of the university.
Claudia Lambert.
Wanted to take the money.
Wasn't it?
It might be
She was the one that would walk around in her bare feet.
Yeah.
She wanted to do some stuff that was unethical with the money that was the alumni money, and she wanted to just mix it in with all the other money.
All presidents want to do that.
She was told she couldn't do that, so she wanted to take she tried to take the alumni, I think, to court. I'd have to go back.
That sounds vaguely
sounds
familiar.
Right. Yeah.
And the alumni took their money, including people, some significant monies left the college at that point. And it hurt them. And I'm afraid that could happen again. My concern is, I don't have a dog in this hunt. I mean, my daughter went to Seattle U. My son went to Westminster. I mean, my kids didn't go to school here. They didn't even grow up here. They didn't even grow up in the United States. My grandchildren probably won't go to school here. Be nice if they did, but I kind of doubt it.
Sure.
What I care about is what happens if that university goes away? What if it folds? What happens if it folds? And colleges do fold all the time.
I think that's not an unfounded fear. Perhaps not necessarily for them, but I mean, it has been argued, vigorously argued since the financial crash in the mid-2000s. I don't know if y'all remember, but I mean, there was a real effort by Haley Barbour to close universities.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Because of how expensive. I mean, I don't know if he took it because the opportunity was right.
The rumor was that it was going to. The rumor was that Southern Miss was going to get the W. That was the big
to me.
rumor.
The rumor was that Mississippi State was going to get the W.
Well, that might have been a time previous to that.
I think it was a lot closer than people thought, and I think there was a rumor that probably 50% of the black colleges would have been folded into each other or closed. I know Valley State almost. I know Alcorn almost closed. And I think right now, just my opinion, given the state of the universities, for something to close, it will be Delta State. That will be.
I don't know. Delta State's thriving right now. Have you been down there?
Holy cow. Their enrollment is like decreased in the last 8 to 10 years by probably 2/3. I mean, I think the thing about the W, and the reason I'm saying is I looked at it recently. I had a long conversation with somebody that expressed a fear, the same fear you have, and so I was at home, and I pulled up the numbers that are it's the federal reporting numbers that the universities have to report to the federal government, and I pulled up the W's. And then I got onto actually the states, so it's all the state universities and all their federal reporting numbers on enrollment. The W, outside of the big three, has probably had the least drop, because you had a peak enrollment of college enrollment was like 2010, 2011 for the whole country. Yeah. Everything is on the downslide. Yeah. Wade knows this. Yes. You're just running out of kids.
Yeah, the baby boomers' children, yeah.
So the W might have dropped by 15 to 16% in enrollment. I'm telling you, I think Delta State has dropped by like 50%. Mississippi Valley State, really the historical black colleges of Mississippi have precipitously declined other than Jackson State. Southern Miss has declined. Ole Miss, Mississippi State have grown. I don't think, and I could be wrong, I think the legislature faced with a choice of folding, closing, or whatever the W. You've got one historic women's college, 4 historic black colleges. They will draw their knives on 1 or 2 of those.
You're making the assumption that they're going to do something that's statistically rational. I think that the W is a lot more vulnerable than you think it is, because you're not going to close down politically any of the black schools.
Yeah, they will. I think they will.
I don't think they will.
I think
Tate Reeves will.
I think they will. That's what I'm saying. I think that they will take a historical black school in Delta State and maybe one other one before they do the W. Because here's the thing about the W. The W has a very large black population, specifically black women.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
that's true.
And here's the thing. You talk about making money. Colleges, specifically a college with the demographics of a W, yes, they make money from tuition, but they make a lot of money from federal government, either in loans that are guaranteed or because of grants. The demo there of Pell Grants, right?
Yeah.
Because of these children that are from the socioeconomic status that they come from.
And it doesn't matter if they ever show up to class. If they signed up and said they're going to the W,
I can't remember what the rationales are, how long they have to go or whatever. But what I'm saying is, academically, and I'm not casting aspersions on the W. This is kind of indicative of all universities across the country. Over the last 15 to 20 years, they've all become heavy at the top. I would say the W is probably better than that just because they have to be. A classroom if it's not cash flowing itself, or at least you could break it down to a teacher level. At teacher level, if there's not if that teacher or professor is not cash flowing themselves, right, or the department on an average is not cash flowing itself, it goes away. Just to your point, the teacher goes away. Okay, it's not really within what's taught. It's the extraneous expenses that are associated with managing the university. If those are out of whack, and that's kind of what's happened with the W, again, is back to what's happened to Columbus, the same thing. The W had a set number of students that they had. They built an infrastructure to maintain and occupy those students. As the students have shrank, they've lost the revenues to maintain those facilities. Not uncommon, okay? Columbus is the same way. Columbus had, was a thriving, growing population in the 80s and into the 90s. That was the proposition for the 45 bypass. Never came to pass because Columbus has been shrinking. It just now has grown a little bit. We have an infrastructure for an amount of people that now is dispersed, little neighborhoods here, little neighborhoods there, people, with spread all over the place, that now you have a smaller group of people having to manage the same physical plant, same physical resources. Any way you slice it is very, very difficult, whether in the municipal level, whether those universities. And I don't know the inside baseball on the W. I think, back to your president that you were saying about mixing the alumni money, I think they probably had a run of people that were not focused on the future, not focused on that physical plant, maintaining those buildings, not focused on what the next steps were. And to play catch up, Nora Miller and whoever's there, they're trying to play catch up in an environment that is, just by the nature of how it functions, very slow moving.
That's correct.
And it's so hard to go through that because you've got so many levels of government bureaucracy, and to get money to do that, to grow their budget, all that stuff is so difficult. To turn back that tide, it's just like what we face in Columbus. You got a series of things where we act like we're somebody like Oxford, where we can make mistakes because it doesn't matter. People are coming, the housing prices are growing, there's all this, it doesn't matter, okay? All this money's coming in, our taxes, we're not. We're a stagnant to shrinking.
Yeah, we buy 2 lemon double-decker buses that are sitting out in the open rotting because we want to be Oxford.
Do they run at all?
Do we still have those buses?
Yeah.
I haven't thought about those buses in years.
They just bought a second one.
They're down there.
They had one,
they're down there at Public Works.
Yeah.
Down
the
there
new
at
ones.
Public Works,
the new ones under the cover.
When was the last time they pulled one of those out? Did they do it during the pilgrimage?
Well, they were supposed to. Well, okay. If you want to shift to that, I can tell you.
No.
Well, I talked to the guy at Waters. I can tell you about that.
We have established your opinion about the CBD.
Well, no. But it speaks to the whole thing. If you don't take care of your infrastructure, you don't take care of your. If you buy a lemon, what happens? It sits there and rots. I don't want the W to sit there and rot.
I mean, I've always been told
Columbus,
if you get lemons, make lemonade, right?
Well, they ain't making lemonade. Because they're buying buildings instead of taking care of the things they have.
I think the problem with the CVB, and I'll say this, is that when people get out of their lane, there's a saying that's in business. You go to business school, they teach you this saying, and it's a bullshit, stupid saying. And it's called stick to your knitting. Okay, you can think of it as dance with the one that brung you. What you should continue to do what's made you successful and what you got into doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's our brand?
And that is when people get out of that. And I don't know everything. I'm taking what you said. I'm listening to what you're saying, and those type of things fit in that mold. That the CVB's buying real estate, that they're doing this, that they're doing that. And this is kind of as a rule, when you don't stick to your knitting, whether it's a $1 billion business or this organization, you're getting out of what you know. And when you're getting out of what you know, then you're liable to make mistakes. And some of those mistakes can be big mistakes. And a lot of times, you may not know you're making those mistakes until you're getting run over by the bus.
Or you hire somebody who has no background in tourism to run a multi-million dollar tourism business.
I mean, I guess for me, and I know this is kind of a bullshit thing, and I hate when people say it, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. What would, if you were there and you were the queen of whatever,
right? You become the dictator.
I would hire the people who knew what to do.
Of tourism. I'm not saying that you've got to do, but what would you say? What would be kind of some first, like, gimme putts?
I would hire the people who actually know what they're doing, and I wouldn't be. The first thing I'd do is I'd cancel the. I wouldn't be taking pictures of my house and putting it as advertising for my community. That's the first thing I'd do. I'd actually go out and do the things that are beautiful in this town. I'd start with the courthouse. I'd go to some of the old downtown. I'd go out. I'd probably take pictures of the soccer field, probably in the summertime when it was green. I'd go and take pictures of the things that actually show off what are the nice, good things about our community and the historical pieces. Our brand is the history of this town.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
And that history goes back to 1820. It doesn't, good, bad, or whether we like what happened.
Yeah.
History is history. You can't rewrite it. You can't change it.
Back when we were in Alabama.
We weren't. They just misread the survey.
Rufus Ward told me we were in Alabama.
No,
once.
they thought we were in. They thought we were in Alabama. They thought the
Okay.
river. They thought the river
Was the boundary.
and they were wrong.
See, I'm kind of of your mind. Is I like. I'm not one of those people that finds the pilgrimage to be distasteful if it's done right. I think that there's an inclusive history that they can fold into there,
Yeah.
And I think they're working at it.
including the true picture of the enslaved, and including the free and enslaved. I listened to your article about the bridge builder. That's
Horace King.
Horace King.
Whose owner gave him his freedom. He was probably the owner's, probably his brother, maybe. Probably his partial sibling or son, possibly.
Right.
But the bigger part of it was he gave him his freedom because he was going into bankruptcy and he didn't want his competitors
Just take him
to
away.
take his slave and
wow.
put him, because he was a brilliant architect. He
was an architect. So
he was a bridge builder.
Okay.
And he was like a preeminent bridge builder across the
Correct.
Southeast.
Yeah.
I just think that there's things that are like that, and even physical remnants of things that are like that could be capitalized on in our town.
Yeah, the posts. There's some of the posts are still down there at the in front of the Fraser House.
Okay, from that bridge.
Yeah, on Bridge Street, which
Okay.
is now 4th Avenue South.
Right.
You can see where it was. You can see these massive posts that have been cut off. So, and you know why the bridge came down? Really? There's something. It was burned. It was no, it was taken down because the people in Aberdeen were pissed because when they could only get their cotton to market when the river came up in the winter. So you couldn't get up to Aberdeen on the river until flood season. Well, when the flood came up, you couldn't get the river boats
because the bridge was right
because
there.
of the bridge. So they were pissed off. So they were having to pay money to bring their stuff to our port and then load it onto
Those damn Aberdeen people.
but it's just, commerce yet again is somebody's, it's hurting somebody's business.
Yeah.
Things haven't, nothing's changed.
Well,
The almighty dollar is still God.
Correct.
what do you find to be hopeful around here then?
The people.
With the
y'all
exception
didn't
of
know
one.
me from Adam's House Cat.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you existed.
Yeah, that's a good question. How did you find out about us?
I think Ryan told me. Ryan
Okay.
Munson. I
Okay.
can't remember if it was Ryan or Alan or I stumbled on you. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay.
Doesn't matter. How did you find out about me?
I'll tell you how I did. I was in here one day,
Oh, I can tell you exactly how I found out about you.
and I said,
Uh-oh.
No, it's not bad.
There was somebody in here, and they said, "What are y'all doing?" I said, "Well, we're shooting the shit. We're talking about starting a podcast." And this was a lady, and she said, "Oh, you better watch out. There's this woman named Shannon Evans, and she's starting a podcast, and she's going to open up this big can of worms about this, that, and the other thing." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds pretty interesting," and it is.
I heard about you through a friend of my wife's who was very into scuttlebutt type things.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of the same thing. Well, Mark and I started a podcast. There's this other podcast, right? Have you listened to it? And I'm like, no, it's all about Nancy Carpenter.
Well, and it started because I was so angry. I really didn't plan to do anything after those first 30, and then it just keeps going and it hadn't ended yet. And then I was thinking, well, I can't do this forever. And I thought, well, I could go after every other elected official or person.
Right.
And Nancy's not a private individual. She works. She's a government.
No, you're doing journalism work.
It is a government. That is a government-funded position. So is paid for with our tax dollars. And I thought about the fact that soccer field down there, as an engineer, I just kind of go. Anyways, and there's a lot of stuff around here. The amphitheater. I mean, these are things that are ripe for discussing. But in order to put it in context, you have to understand this community. And so I have Murder Mondays because we have so many.
Do we? I feel like we've kind of gone down a little, or is
like,
that just my imagination?
Well, I don't know.
That's kind of my feel-good thing.
Yeah.
In terms of murder, I hope you run out of content very, very soon.
That would be great, but I'm just doing historic murders. I'm not going to play on anybody's pain and suffering who's living today, there might be a few exceptions based on the fact that I think it needs, there's something that needs, there's a context to it. So, there's so much about this town, and so much of the history is just sitting in newspaper articles and nobody's written about it. I mean, would you have known about the thing of Robert Gleed?
No.
Because the kids do. I mean, don't get me wrong. The kids who do Tales from the Crypt and all that, they do a good job, but they're kids. They're not doing primary. They start doing primary research, but they're still high school kids, and they have other classes they have to take.
Sure.
And, they've still got to pass biology and all that other stuff. So they do a good job of what they have, but they don't do the depth of research that I do. And I mean, I'm doing some significant stuff. Plus, I'm down at the MDAH all the time with my work. So what's another few minutes of pulling up something?
I got you.
That I need,
multitasking,
or going over to the Grant Library, Ulysses S. Grant's presidential library over there. There's stuff like that. So everything I try and do, I'm trying to make people see our community and see we're no different than any other community. We have our murders. We have our, politicians who caught with their hands in the pot. We have people who do good stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, I've been interviewing people. I did the Magnolia Literacy Project. Now that's not here. That's a friend of mine who's a professor at Jackson State, but her work has the potential to impact any small town in America or any other place where people decide to work on the literacy rates. And it's not just literacy as in reading, it's financial literacy.
Sure.
It's a little bit of everything. So I've been interviewing people and trying to point out that Mississippi's not a whole bunch of uneducated rubes, and all we do is, sit around and spit tobacco and,
wave the Confederate flag all day.
Well, not all day.
No.
We got to replug our tobacco and drink our moonshine.
Yeah, absolutely, which we buy at the liquor store.
Not buy shoes.
The closes that, that the blue laws in some counties don't allow to be open after 8 or after 10 or on Sundays.
I'm hoping Mississippi will be the next destination place.
I think it's got the potential.
We've gone from Texas to Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama's picking up. Maybe we can be the next one where we get
once people figure out how cheap it is to live here,
and that we're not a bunch of back-asswards idiots.
That's right.
And that it's January and we're sitting outside in a beer garden in our shirt sleeves. I literally am in a long sleeve T-shirt and a vest and leggings, and it's January what? What's today's date?
10th.
12th.
12th. Whatever. We're literally sitting in a beer garden outside.
Maybe it is the 10th. Anyway.
Well, it doesn't matter.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Just don't ask about whatever happens weather-wise tomorrow.
Or next week. We won't talk about Monday. But even then, everything, as my daddy used to say, well, I don't like the weather, but I'll wait 15 minutes and it's going to change anyways. And that's kind of the way it is.
I can promise you this, Shannon. People are paying attention to what you're saying. They may not be doing it for the most noble reasons, but they are absolutely listening to you, which means that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, good, ill, or otherwise, you're making a difference.
Well, I'll tell you, I have one spinoff that's coming. And I don't know.
You're already in spinoff territory?
Well, I remember I told you I have a degree. I have a master's in creative writing.
Right.
And while I do work in nonfiction, there's nothing like a good story. And we're full of them. And
Are you writing an episodic book that you're going to release as a podcast?
Possibly. Might be called Tombigee Tales.
That's Well, you stay close to home. I'll give you that.
Well, it dumps into the Tombigbee. I thought that was kind of important. But I think it ties together. It will tie together some of the historical elements that actually happen around here with some of the people who were from here who settled this area.
That reminds me when I was working for the dispatch, they sent me to Tibby.
The disgrace.
No, they sent me to Tibby to cover this event that was happening to these people who were getting water for the first time.
Oh my God!
You were talking about all those people who weren't shoeless. And
Right, so we're supposed to convince them that we're not rubes.
Well, have we solved all the world's problems yet, y'all?
No, but at least we've got people thinking about them.
Shannon, I really enjoyed talking to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Y'all gonna come and be on my show?
Of course.
Sure we will.
Okay.
So yes, it's called Tombigbee Tales. It's on all the things, right?
Yeah, it is. It's also on YouTube.
And on YouTube. And so check it out, please. And get in touch with us at that email address I can never remember. Mark, what is it?
It's info@probablyirrelevantpodcast.com.
That's info@probablyirrelevantpodcast.com. I've been Wade. He's been Mark. She's been Shannon. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Catch us next week, guys. Have a good one. Bye.